Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. This is going to be part two of our three-part webinar series on landing a supply chain job in the pandemic era. We hope everyone is doing well and staying safe and healthy these days. My name is Rodney Apple. I'm the founder and managing partner of SCM Talent Group. And today's webinar topic will cover job search and networking strategies. Part one, we covered resume and LinkedIn optimization. And then when we get to part three, we're going to cover interviewing tactics as well as offer negotiation. So with that said, I'm going to get into the agenda, give you a quick introduction in terms of who I am and what we do and how I help people. And then we'll get started with the content. So thanks again for joining us. Again, the name is Rodney Apple, founder, managing partner, SCM Talent Group. We are a national supply chain recruitment company based out of Asheville, North Carolina. Today, we're going to go through ways you can connect with us. We're going to start with networking. Networking has obviously changed quite a bit with this pandemic, especially when it relates to in-person networking. So we're going to focus on digital or online networking tactics. And then from there, I'm going to get into how to develop and execute a winning job search strategy. And at the end, we'll wrap up with Q&A. So just to let you know, in case you are unable to attend the webinar or you'd like to replay it, it is being recorded and we will send out a link to replay via our YouTube channel. It'll come out in the next few days. And also, if you have questions, there is a section that you can enter your questions. Make sure you use the Q&A tab and just type in your questions anywhere between now and throughout the webinar. At the very end, we'll go through a Q&A session and I'll try to answer as many questions as I can. So be sure to take notes. We are exploring a kind of a new format here with the mantra of less is more. So I'm not going to have all of what I say on the screen. I'm going to be communicating that verbally, so make sure you take good notes. Again, if you miss anything, just know that we're going to have the replay out on the YouTube channel. So with that said, let's get started. So again, the name is Rodney Apple, and I've been recruiting for my entire career. So since I got out of college, 26 years and counting. I've been focused in what I call end-to-end supply chain for most of that time, for about 20 years. And then half of that time, I worked for a handful of corporations. You see the logos there. I started with the Home Depot, built their first supply chain department, and stayed on there and led all recruitment for professional and executive positions throughout their entire supply chain logistics organization, including 80 distribution centers. From there, I went to Coca-Cola, led all of their manufacturing recruitment with 22 factories in the United States, sourcing, procurement, all the planning functions, logistics, continuous improvement. Was there about 7 years. Filled about 1,000 positions between those two companies. From there, I did a couple of short stints with Kimberly-Clark on the healthcare product side, and then Cummins more on the automotive side. Through that time, working on both the inside of several large corporations, all of these companies made the Gartner top 25 supply chain list. So I've definitely been a part of helping to, advance the supply chain function at several companies from good to great. So I've seen a lot of things. I've helped out many thousands of supply chain professionals, advance their careers, find new jobs and so forth. And I'm excited to share these tactics with you and give you kind of that inside and outside perspective. Also serve, if any of you belong to ASCM, the Association for Supply Chain Management, formerly called APIX. I've been serving as their career coach since 2014. I also write for their magazine. Speaking of writing, I do author the Supply Chain Talent blog, which can be found on our website at scmtalent.com/blog. And I'm also writing a book. It looks like this will be the first book ever published on careers in supply chain, taking you through the journey of what is supply chain, what are the career paths, how do you land that first job, how do you advance your career all the way to the very top in terms of leadership. So that's me, and we're going to go ahead and get started with the content. If we're not connected on LinkedIn, there's my LinkedIn handle right there. We're also very active on social media, Twitter. We've got a YouTube channel that we created a year or so ago. So we've got a lot of content that's there. And we also push that out on Facebook as well. So those are areas that you can connect with us, follow us, and engage with us as well. All right, so we're going to start with networking again. The focus of today's webinar, knowing that it's not, let's say 100% safe to get out and attend networking events. So we're hoping that that's going to change in the coming months. But for now, I want to focus on online and digital networking tactics. I want to start out with a slide here. This slide says a lot to me, and this comes from a professor. He's one of the world's top professors when it comes to studying how networks can impact people's lives, careers, and so forth. So if you take a look at this graph here, and again, the guy's name is Dr. Ronald Byrd. If you Google his name, he's got a lot of really good information out on the internet. But he's a professor of sociology and strategy at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. But he attributes networking, and he's done plenty of studies on this, can be a major predictor of career success. So on the left-hand side, you see relative performance, looking at factors such as compensation and wages and so forth, performance evaluations, promotions. On the bottom axis there, you've got your network constraints, and then you'll see on the left, people that have higher, greater career success tend to have larger open networks where they link lots of different networks and circles and groups of people together. On the right side, you have those that are little, that don't really embrace networking. Let's say they have a small group of people, they hang out with the same people, they share a lot of the same ideas. So there's a strong correlation there between networking and career success. So I wanted to highlight that because a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that, well, I only need a network when I need to find a new job. And that is the biggest mistake that you can make. Always be networking is my mantra. I mean, in the recruiting business, of course, that's how we do a lot of what we do in terms of finding, great clients to work with and finding great candidates to work with as well. So don't make that mistake. Always be thinking about how can I expand my network and how can I, it's not about growing numbers of connections. A lot of people make that mistake too. It's definitely, quality is definitely better than quantity. You want to have a good blend of both. I'll tell you what, those that, there's been, unfortunately, a lot of people have been thrust into a job search mode, unfortunately, as a result of this pandemic, and it's wreaking havocs on the economy, obviously. And, those that have been in that mode of always networking are going to be in a better shape and better position to find new employment than those that are just now getting started with networking activities. So just keep that in mind, even when you land a new job, or maybe you're out looking for a better job, make sure that you bake in time into your calendars and routines to engage in networking activities. There are a lot of benefits. I'm going to rattle off several of these. Obviously networking, the more people you're connected to, the more doors that can open in terms of opportunities. Obviously that could mean, new jobs can open up, but it's also can open up new business opportunities. Let's say you're in sales or in marketing, and it's about your network. Building mutually beneficial business relationships. You got exposure to new ideas and new ways of thinking. I think that's extremely important to diversify when it comes to the types of people you're connecting to, from all kinds of demographics, age, different countries. Just kind of learning how people think, that can definitely help open up your mind and improve your critical thinking abilities. Generating a stream of referrals when you're looking for, let's say you're in a hiring position. Wouldn't it be nice to just cast out a message through your networking channels to generate some referrals for your open positions? You can stay on top of industry trends, happenings. You can elevate your personal brand, your expertise and reputation. You can gain a lot of satisfaction. I know I gain a lot of satisfaction and tremendous gratitude just from being able to help people that need help as it relates to their career in supply chain. And that's been a big focus of mine, is helping people with regardless of what they need. And you can get that same kind of gratification by just participating in networking and helping others, because that's what it's all about, is giving and receiving. You can earn credits to maintain your professional certifications. For example, let's say you have a APIC certification. Attending their networking events is a great way to get those maintenance points on your maintaining your certification status. Helps to build self-esteem and confidence. Obviously, facilitating introductions and referrals to others. Gives you great opportunity to interact with industry peers, again, for learning development purposes, also sharing best practices. From an entrepreneurial perspective, coming up with new ideas, new possible business ideas, business ventures. I can certainly say I've benefited from that myself. Potentially, discover investment opportunities. It's a great way to maybe meet new suppliers, new service providers, even new customers, build new friendships. And you could even, meet maybe your significant other. That happened to me. My wife, I met her at a networking event in Atlanta. It was a recruiter's happy hour around the holidays, and here we are, married, 2 kids. We met at a networking event. So you never know. Let's talk about networking avenues. We know that getting out to networking events, there's lots of supply chain associations out there that put on networking events. They do things at a national, at a global level, and sometimes many of them will have chapters in some of the major metro areas. We know that a lot of those have been postponed or canceled. Might be looking at later this year or even into 2021 before some of those resume. But in the meantime, there still can be a tremendous value from joining some of these associations. You need to kind of identify the ones that align closely with your interest and your career goals. Just a few that come to mind. I mentioned APIC, which is now called ASCM. You've got the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals, CSCMP. Of course, there's an acronym for just about everything these days. You've got the Institute of Supply Management. They lean heavy on the sourcing and procurement side. You've got WERC Work, Warehousing Education Resource Council, and a slew of others. If you're looking for a list, I do have a pretty comprehensive list out on our website, scmtalent.com. Just click on job seekers and then resources, and you'll see a list of all the associations and links to access them. I've also got links to most of the supply chain and related certifications if you're interested in obtaining certifications. But most of these associations, once you are a member, you have access to some pretty rich information, such as their membership directories. So you can get into, I know APIC's ASCM, they call theirs the supply chain channel, for example. I know CSCMP has an online membership directory. It's a great way to search for other members. ASCM has 45,000 plus members around the globe. CSCMP has many, tens of thousands as well. And you can get in there and run searches by company, title, city, state, so forth, so you can identify other members to connect with. That's a great lead in. Hey, I'm also a member of ASCM and would love to network with you. So keep that in mind. A lot of people, don't take advantage of those online membership directories. Nowadays, with this pandemic, we're seeing a lot of supply chain conferences are pivoting to a digital or virtual experience. So if you get out on the web, there's a lot of those going on. I'd say there's probably one every weekend or so. But if you want to participate, I think they tend to drop the prices for these virtual events because they can get kind of expensive when you go to one in person, factoring in flights and hotel. So you can kind of get somewhat of the same experience in terms of learning and development. You can get a sense of who the speakers are, and that's just a fantastic way to network while participating in learning development type sessions. There's also virtual career fairs. I know ASCM, speaking of ASCM, they just had theirs, I believe, a couple of months ago. So that's another resource, especially if you're a job seeker, that you can take advantage of. So that covers the supply chain, associations. We're hoping things resume to normal, but in the meantime, know that you can leverage those association memberships to identify other people to network. And people tend to help each other out that are members of the same association. You've also got online business communities. I'm going to rattle off a few here. You've got the Chamber of Commerce. That's one of the largest business association nonprofits within the United States. So if you go to uschamber.com, they've got chapters all over the place, and they will have networking events listed. You've got the BNI, which stands for Business Networking International. It's BNI America. They also have, they put out the business journals, and they have a calendar of events as well. If you go to bizjournals.com/calendar, that's a third resource that has a list of networking events. Networking doesn't have to be 100% dedicated to your career field. Let's say supply chain management. There's plenty of other avenues to network. Obviously, you've got social media, which can be a fantastic place. You can also go down the rabbit hole and waste a lot of time if you're not careful, especially places like Facebook. But within social media sites, obviously on LinkedIn, you've got groups, and I would definitely encourage you to get out there. If you get into the basic search field within LinkedIn.com, you can search within groups and try to find groups that align with your interest levels. Again, there's plenty of supply chain groups out there. It's a place, it's a hub where like-minded people come to share stories and news, answer questions, things like that. So those are great places. I started up a group back when I was at Home Depot, I think right when LinkedIn came out. I think it was the year 03 or 04. It's called Supply Chain Recruiters. And the goal there is to connect supply chain candidates with employers and corporate recruiters that are looking for talent. So feel free to go on there and join. I'll definitely approve your membership. I've got a Facebook group I started a while back. It's a global group. It's called Supply Chain Jobs. We've got thousands of members there that are posting jobs all over the place. So that's just another resource for you as well. You've got a few other places that you can check out as well that I would recommend. There's 3 that are kind of networking communities. Anyone can start up a networking group, but you may want to check those out. Meetup.com is one. That's kind of the main one. You've got Eventbrite, eventbrite.com. And then there's LinkedIn groups that we just talked about a minute ago. Between those 3, they are great platforms for groups. And again, doesn't have to be supply chain. It could be something that's local to the city that you live in. I'm a hobbyist landscape photographer. I like to go hiking here in Asheville in the mountains. We've got lots of places to do that. So, you got your business side of networking and you got your personal side of networking. You just never know where you're going to meet somebody, though, that could help you get a foot in the door somewhere, or at least provide some good advice and so forth. Other avenues that you definitely want to explore, connecting with alumni on LinkedIn. LinkedIn makes it super easy to search by your university. Then you could maybe put in some keywords like logistics, supply chain, procurement, depending on what your focus is from a career perspective. Because again, people that went to the same alma mater, they tend to want to help one another out. So I would definitely encourage you to get in there and run searches and try to find people that work in maybe similar professions, perhaps even companies that you're targeting, and reach out. Hey, we went to the same college. I'm looking for, X type of job. Would you be able to help a fellow alumni out? And that's a great tactic. Asking for referrals, of course, is a hallmark of networking. So make sure everybody that you come into contact with, always ask, is there someone else in your network that I should be connecting with that could possibly help me with my search or get me in the door at this company or that company, and so forth. Civic organizations, there's a boatload of those that you can tap into, from a Rotary to Kiwanis, the Elks Club, Moose Clubs, Lions Club. There's no shortage of those types of civic organizations that do good for the community. Again, just another avenue to network, taking classes, online courses, things like that. Toastmasters, you can improve your public speaking and meet other business professionals. So again, don't just think that you have to belong to a supply chain association. There's plenty of other places that you can to embrace and connect with others as well. As it relates to online networking, obviously you're doing this typically through 3 different channels. Obviously you have the phone, you've got the ability to communicate through social media channels like Facebook Messenger and through the LinkedIn direct messaging platform. You've got text as well, and obviously email. So you got different ways to connect with people, and I would encourage you to use all of the above, because what I've found over the years in terms of just from like looking for candidates and clients, prospecting. Put your business development cap on, because networking involves researching and trying to find the right people to connect with. And it also involves leveraging those different communication tools to engage your contacts. Typically, you're wanting to get them on the phone, but you always want to have some type of a goal involved for each contact. So think of networking as if you're looking for a job, and that's what we're talking about today. So perhaps you have certain target companies. Then it just comes down to identifying the right decision makers within those companies, and we'll get into that here in just a minute. But have a goal in mind of what you want to accomplish for every person that you reach out to. That's very important. You don't want to just start randomly going down the list of connections and reaching out and stumbling. So definitely want to put those goals into place. You want to think about the benefits that you could be gained from connecting with someone. Obviously, if you're looking for a job, you want to get as many referrals and job leads. Landing an interview, of course, is going to be a primary goal, but think about some secondary goals as well. Perhaps it's establishing a long-term connection. Maybe this person could be a potential supplier down the road, or a mentor, or a mentee. So don't just think about, I need a job. Think about some other things that you could benefit from every person that you reach out to. So have those benefits, write them down. I would also, write down a list of smart questions that you could ask each prospect. Sure, you want to get referrals. Sure, you want to let them know you've applied to a job. I'm sure you want to find out more about that position. Ideally, an introduction to the hiring manager is nice. But have some questions that can help facilitate that conversation, that back and forth. During the pandemic, you have to also realize that people are juggling a whole lot more than before, especially if you've got kids at home. They're not going to school these days. They may not be able to go to daycare. They may not have childcare. So people while they're working at home, they could be busier. They could be a lot more stressed out. I mean, especially for those that have unfortunately lost their position. So just keep a tone of empathy and genuineness. You don't want to make it all about you. You want to try to strike up some kind of a mutually beneficial conversation and relationship. That's really what the hallmark of networking is. It's not about what's in it for me. It's about, what's in it for the two of us. So maintain that tone. Keep it very professional. Keep it very real. Keep it natural. You don't want to sound like you're scripted. You don't want to sound like you're overly formal. Keep it very engaging and conversational. Humanize it. However you want to phrase that, that'll take you a long way versus having some kind of formal script or template or cookie cutter template that you're pushing out at a rapid pace. I always think though, look at the person's profile on LinkedIn. How could I help this person? One common thing you could always say is, hey, I'm happy to introduce you to anyone within my network, or help you solve any kind of problems that you might be facing, and so forth. Usually though, with the goal when you're reaching out, you want to, if it makes sense, right? It may not make sense to connect with everybody, right? But try to, aim towards obviously getting together for coffee. May not be a good idea these days, but a call. And if you can even do like, Zoom is a, Zoom, Google Meets is another tool that they're offering it up free. It's very similar to Zoom. Right now we're using Zoom for this webinar. But anytime you can do a call, if you will, through a video conference versus the telephone, it makes it more human. It's the next best thing, as opposed to meeting someone in person. So to try to aim and do that as well. You want to stay organized as you're prospecting, networking. Outlook, you can certainly manage your connections in there and your calendar to stay on top of things. Better yet, if you've got a CRM, customer relationship management tool, HubSpot offers theirs up free. Once you get so many connections, they start charging, and the more connections you have, the more they charge. But that's a pretty cool little CRM. Microsoft has one as well. If you use like 365, they're going to have one built in to their platform that's free to use as well. But you want to track your contacts, your follow-ups, your conversations, so you're highly organized. You know when to follow up with somebody, and so forth. The goal here, you may not find someone that's going to have an immediate opportunity to consider you for, but let's say we know they're hiring. You want to focus on staying on their radar, checking in from time to time. You don't want to just check in. Hey, I'm checking in. Do you have any new opportunities? Always try to have something valuable. It could be a tip, some type of content or an article or some kind of a trend in supply chain. Just have a list of things that you could share that you think could be meaningful and impactful to the other person that you're connecting with, instead of just saying, hey, I'm calling to follow up. Anything new? That gets a little bit annoying, especially the second, third, fourth time you do it. Don't make the mistake, and I see so many job seekers doing this. They make the mistake of emailing or calling someone. They don't hear back within a few days, and they just give up on that person. They move on. You want to follow up. Don't follow up and hammer the person 10 times a day. Don't stalk them. That's going to be they're going to run away from you if you do that. So use common sense. If you do it let's say a follow up every 3, 4, 5 days, after maybe 3, 4 times you don't hear back, probably safe to say to move on. But people are busy. People are juggling a lot these days. So try them through email. Maybe try to hook up with them on LinkedIn. Make a phone call. Leave them a nice voicemail. You want to use those different communication tactics, and you want to keep it simple. Don't go into long-winded messages or long-winded emails. People don't have time to read that. The goal is to engage in a conversation, determine if it makes sense to connect further, and then take it to a Zoom or video call, or at least a phone call. And hopefully soon we can get back out and network in person. Another mistake people make is they'll connect on LinkedIn, and within like 2 minutes you'll get, I'm sure it's happened to you if you've been on LinkedIn long enough. You connect with someone, and within 5 minutes they're already asking you for a favor. So don't be that guy or gal. Give it some space. Nobody wants to be sold or pitched the moment you connect with somebody. So just keep that in mind. Give it some space, and again, use some common courtesy. The main takeaway here, though, when it comes to networking, is the more you give, the more you receive. The more you offer to help, the more you're going to get back. The more you ask and make it about me, the less you're going to get out of networking. So always remember that. There's a whole bunch of tools, apps, websites. We kind of covered some of these. I still feel like LinkedIn is definitely where you want to spend most of your time. So make sure, though, that people are on the go. Even with the pandemic, people are still getting out. You don't have to be behind a laptop or computer to do networking. LinkedIn's got multiple apps. So if you go to mobile.linkedin.com, you can download the LinkedIn app. They've also got other, they've got, Lynda, or the learning platform. They've got LinkedIn Jobs. If you pay for that, you can run the job searches on LinkedIn through your device, and so forth. So make sure that you're taking advantage. LinkedIn Pulse is another great place, like the publishing platform for you to get your name out there. You've got, we talked about LinkedIn groups already, but just, great ways uh, to connect with like-minded people. And then you've got LinkedIn SlideShare, which is a great presentation platform. You can go look at millions of presentations there. Uh, Facebook, still more personal, but like I said, there are some supply chain groups out there. And it's another way for you to connect with people. You've got Twitter. There are a lot of companies that use Twitter to publish their jobs. You want to make sure you can be found too. That goes back to the previous webinar we just did last week on optimizing your LinkedIn profile, integrating the right keywords, making sure your profile is 100% complete from start to finish. That's a great way for you to be discovered. You can be discovered out on Twitter. We use Twitter sometimes to search for candidates. If you're into sharing content and your expertise, obviously WordPress is a great tool to set up a website, a blog, if you will. YouTube is another great platform. We mentioned HubSpot's a good tool to use for a basic CRM. Nowadays, a lot of these CRMs, they'll tell you when someone's opening your email, perfect time to maybe follow up with them or shoot them a phone call. There's a couple of tools that I'll recommend. Jobber is a pretty cool tool for managing your job search. You can log in contacts, your target companies, network activities, and so forth. It's a paid tool, but I have yet to find a really good kind of a job search platform. That's definitely one of the more popular ones. When it comes to staying abreast of trends, we use feedly.com. Wonderful tool. If you're looking for email addresses, contact information, there's a couple that we would recommend. Hunter.io is one, and then freepeoplesearch.com. Great way to pull contact information for those you're trying to reach out to for free. And I believe Hunter lets you do 100 contacts per month. So after that, you got to have a paid membership to get more contacts. So those are a few tools that we recommend for networking. But again, remember, LinkedIn is definitely, I would say, the holy grail. So that kind of covers some of the digital networking tactics. When it comes to the job search, we're going to get into that right now. And then after that, we'll do that Q&A. But just know that with the job search, you want to treat it like a project. You've got activities that you're going to want to manage. You got to have certain goals and things like that. So think of the job search, treat it just like you would a project that you're managing in terms of the seriousness and so forth. And know that networking is where the magic occurs. And that's why I combine these two topics, networking and job searching, because I feel like, where the best results are going to be gained is through networking activities. So when you look at careers in supply chain, and I'm not going to get into all the different career paths, I could spend a couple hours talking about that. We know that they're extremely broad. They're very diverse, from shippers, manufacturers, retail, e-commerce companies. You've got wholesale distributors. You got service providers that service those types of companies, from carriers, 3PLs, 4PLs. You've got management consulting, niche consulting companies, the big four. You've got supply chain technology companies. You've got, training academia. You've got nonprofit associations like ASCM. You've got recruiting companies like us. You got to think about the company size. There's public companies, privately owned, nonprofit. You got private equity, venture capital. And then you got different company sizes, from startups, small, mid-size, large cap, domestic, internet, multinational, and so forth. So ultimately, though, when you look at your career, you need to be thinking about, what are you really good at? What are your key strengths? What do you want to be good at? What do you aspire to be? What's your dream job? What industries are you most interested in? And with this pandemic, we know a lot of industries have kind of taken a decline. Anybody that services the restaurant industry itself, obviously. There's also industries, though, that are similar, like food and beverage production, that are and CPG, especially sanitation products. We know they're going through the roof. So when you put your job search together, think about those industries that are on the way up versus the way down, and focus your efforts there. What kind of functional areas are you most interested in? You got to factor in automation. Is automation going to get rid of certain jobs like fulfillment, warehousing? I don't think it's going to get rid of them anytime soon, but it's, it definitely could eat into some of those jobs in time as the technology gets smarter and more powerful. You're going to have geographical preferences and limitations. you ultimately want to make sure that the jobs you're pursuing too can afford the lifestyle that you want to have and maintain. So, you factor that in as well. You don't want to target a position that's not going to meet your needs. Huge fan of SMART goal planning. Essentially that stands for, it's an acronym, like there's an acronym for everything in supply chain, but goal planning, make sure your goals are specific, keep them very clear, concise, and simple. You want to make sure they're measurable, so you have some action plans that you're going to measure. Make sure they're achievable. You want to make sure you have a stretch goal. They're not too easy, but not too difficult. Try to strive somewhere in the middle. Make sure they're relevant. They align closely with your career interest, your aspirations. They've got to be time-based. That means that you've got realistic deadlines to set. And the key thing here is to write your career goals down, make them highly visible, put a copy on your refrigerator, copy on your laptop screen, in the mirror, and so forth. So constant reminder, your goals are in front of you, you're going to be more likely to accomplish them. As it relates to your job search, again, this goes back to project management 101. You want to have, kind of a way to track your progress, right? So again, go back to having your goals, and then you're going to have your action plan, your blueprint, if you will. It's going to consist of putting a target list of companies together. What are the activities you're going to do to reach those companies, to reach the decision makers, not just posting online. You notice I haven't talked about at all about posting to jobs. Now that, you want to check that box, that you also don't want to overly rely on it, because we know that there's way more competition today than there was before this pandemic. So you have to make sure that you do everything under the umbrella when it comes to your job search activities, and especially networking. You're going to come across referrals and contacts. You want to track those contacts. Again, a CRM is best, but if you can't, we got a spreadsheet here I'm going to show you. It's a job search tracking template. You want to track the companies you're applying to. It's a pet peeve of mine when I call somebody, hey, you applied to this position for what is that again? When did I do that? You sound like you're very unorganized. So make sure you track all the jobs you're applying to, all of the interviews you're applying to as well. You want to track those. Did I send out a thank you card? They told me to follow, if I don't hear, to follow up within a week, I think, or was it 2 weeks? So you want to track those, because after you're applying to jobs, it can get very easy to get disorganized, and things kind of spin out of control. So to maintain laser focus, you've got to write this stuff down and keep it highly organized. You want to track your offers that you get, any kind of career websites and apps that we just kind of covered, the passwords, login information. Keep it all in one place, just like you would with managing a project. As you discover which activities are driving the best results, tweak your action plan. This isn't something that's going to be set in stone. It's going to be a very dynamic process. You might find that, wow, I'm having some tremendous success by just messaging people on LinkedIn as opposed to emailing them. Well, you want to do more of that if that's working for you. Make sure you set time aside every day to review the progress. The night before, maybe put a to-do list together, so you wake up, you're ready to go and hit the ground running. Here's just a snapshot of the job search tracking template. I didn't put every single tab on here, but if you kind of look, there's an action plan. I'm going to attend a supply chain event or networking event once a month. Then you can put in notes, next steps. You've got, I'm going to send out 5 LinkedIn invites a day or a week. You've got a target companies tab. You've got networking contacts, the job applications. There's the interview tab, and there's the offer tab as well. If you'd like a copy of this, then you can take it and make it your own. Feel free to email Rodney, rodney.apple@scmtalent.com, and we'll send you a copy to take a look at, give you a good example of what we've recommended for our job seekers. And then from there, take it from there, make it your own, customize it, and so forth. Make sure that you're automating certain aspects of your job search. Job alerts, you can set those emails. I'm sure most people know how to do that. I'd say the 2 big ones that you want to focus in on are Indeed.com. Indeed is like the Google of job boards. They will crawl most companies' career or job listings pages They have bots that go out just like Google has bots come out to all the websites out there around the globe. They do this, but they strictly focus it on job boards for companies, and they do it for free. So they'll go out and scrape jobs 24/7. And so setting up an alert, you might need to set up multiple alerts. I would use the advanced alert page, and continue to refine that, making sure you're getting relevant jobs coming in. You don't want a bunch of stuff coming in that's not relevant. So tighten up that search string when you put these alerts in. This is a great way to discover new companies that are hiring. Obviously, you can apply online. In a minute, I'm going to tell you how to go around the back door. I think LinkedIn Jobs is another one. A lot of companies are posting jobs on LinkedIn. You can also set up alerts on places like Google Alerts or Talkwalker, and that'll keep anything mentioned on the internet. It'll pull those jobs into your email. Let's see. As it relates to networking and pushing out content, you could use a site like Hootsuite. We use that, or TweetDeck. It's a great way for you to set up alerts, and you can see what kind of keywords or jobs are coming in that match. So think about that as well. And you can also automate pushing out content to keep your name in front of people. Going through the back door, I think if there's anything in this presentation that I think is critical, and this goes back to kind of the networking with a very tight focus. You want to, let's say you apply to a position, you don't hear back. Well, what can I do to get more exposure for my application and get me in front of that hiring manager? So I recommend going into LinkedIn, go to the advanced search page. Most job descriptions sometimes they'll tell you reports into the VP of operations. Well, just put in VP of operations, put in that company name you just applied to. Hopefully that hiring manager is going to pop up so you know who he or she is. But try to connect with the hiring managers through, again, email, through LinkedIn, social media, through the phone as well. Doesn't have to be the hiring manager. Think about maybe the person that might have been in that job that just got promoted. That's a good person to reach out to. You can reach out to people that are doing the same kind of work. I like to call those informational interviews. You can reach out to recruiters that work at the company, perhaps the HR person, or even the head of supply chain. A lot of times you reach out to the folks at that C-level. Those resumes typically get delegated down to the decision maker anyway. So make sure you got multiple contacts that you can reach out to. Don't think you have to reach out to just one person, the hiring manager. As long, if you get through to one person and they can help you get a foot in the door, that's all that matters. Once you connect with someone on LinkedIn, it usually will give you their email address. So that's how you can scrape the email address, follow up through email, follow up through LinkedIn, whatever it takes to get through to that individual. Always, again, have goals in mind, ask for referrals, things of that nature. Make sure you craft your elevator pitch as well. This is like a 30-second snapshot of who you are, why you're reaching out, the value, your unique value proposition, your skills, how do you solve problems, and so forth. So just practice on that. Practice in front of a mirror, because when you get somebody on the phone, you want to make sure you can, especially if you're cold calling someone, you can quickly convey who you are, why you're calling, and so forth. Make sure you keep up with the company news. That's a great icebreaker when you're reaching out to people. Hey, I just read that you guys are expanding into so-and-so, or you've opened up a new business line of business. So, make sure you've got this. It's a great icebreaker when you can, and it shows them too that you've done your research as well. But be persistent. Just don't overdo it when it comes to this activity. But this is where the magic occurs, not applying to jobs. Again, you want to check that box, but you want to make sure that you can follow up and do it the right way. Don't send them a big, long 2-page letter telling them all the things you've ever done in every job for every employer, because they're not going to read it. People, if you keep it simple, I'd say 5 sentences, give or take, because remember, the goal is to reach out, connect, and try to engage in a further dialogue, ideally on the phone, or even better yet, over Zoom. Working with recruiters. So one of the biggest myths in our industry when it comes to working with recruiters is that recruiters are in the business of finding jobs for candidates. That is anything but true. Don't get me wrong. Here I am. We're trying to help candidates find positions, but we don't really have any control over recruiters. We have to make a living. We get paid by the clients that engage us to fill a search. That's a big difference. Of course, we're going to want to go out and make relationships with candidates, and we're also going to have relationships with our clients, and we're kind of that broker in the middle. So think of recruiters. They're all different shapes, sizes, flavors, if you will, different specialization. Some specialize in logistics, some just do transportation, some just do procurement, some do the whole end-to-end supply chain like our firm. Some just will work on one industry. I'll do supply chain in food and beverage. Some will just do supply chain in one city, like I'm just going to do Atlanta, for example. So know that all recruiters are different. I doubt there's too many that are alike. Your job is to go out and identify the recruiters that align closely from a geographical or industry and functional perspectives. Make sure you bear that in mind. Some do hourly, some do professional, some do only executive. So depending on who you are, what you do, what level you're at, where you live, where you're targeting to work, you want to bear those things in mind. I think LinkedIn's a great place to identify recruiters. Just like any profession, there's plenty of good recruiters. There's plenty of bad recruiters out there as well. But try to identify those that work inside of the companies you're targeting. They can know that everybody is reaching out to them. So, you have to be persistent in how you follow up without being a stalker. You've got agency recruiters / headhunters like myself. I mean, I've been on both sides of the fence. So it's ideal to find some recruiters that align with, again, your profession, and then also connecting with recruiters that work in some of those companies that are on your A target list. Great people to connect with. At a minimum, you want to get the resume into their database. In case they don't have any immediate opportunities, at least upload your resume into their database, because I know at our firm, that's where we worked very hard. We spent a lot of money from advertising and websites to get, draw supply chain candidates into our database. And that's the first place we look when we get a new search. And I have a feeling that's the case for many other firms out there. So make sure you get the resume into the database. And just know the main difference is corporate recruiters are obviously 100% dedicated to filling positions for the company that they're employed at. And then on the agency side, we work with many different types of clients. And there's people that do temp staffing. There's, again, contingency, you've got retain, and so forth. Do your homework, though. Any good recruiter is going to have a completed profile. They're going to have that specialization. There's something to be said about generalists, but I'm a big fan of those that specialize in one area, whether it's one function or whether it's one industry. Just, again, find those that are like-minded and align with who you are. Make sure that you're asking for referrals too. Poll your network. Who's a good recruiter for me to reach out to and engage with? Make sure they have good recommendations, testimonials, and those kind of things. Connect with them on LinkedIn. Again, you want to stay on the radar screen, and not be too aggressive in how you reach out. Again, share your resume, cover letter, etc. You'll want to sign up for job alerts at the agencies if they offer that, a way to stay tuned if they've got a new position that pops up, similar to a job board. Set up the reminders in your calendar as well, and just be persistent without stalking until you can get in touch. Have that elevator pitch crafted, so when you do get in touch, you can quickly convey who you are, the value you bring to the table, why you're calling. Have a call to action. Hey, I'd love to set up a quick exploratory call, and so forth. It's a good opportunity for you, and it may be the only opportunity for you to sell yourself. So make sure that you're very well prepared to do that. And you want to. A lot of people are a little apprehensive about using the phone, but sure, you want to hit them with email, you want to hit them through social, but if you can catch them on the phone as well, that can be a great tool. So, and again, make sure you're using all of those communication tools as you try to connect and go through the back door. We talked about submitting your resume to recruiters' websites. Again, ours here is Job Seeker, first tab, submit resume. So as you're looking through some of the recruiters that you want to target, make sure that you're kind of searching for a place to upload your resume if they don't have a position that you can apply to. Obviously, most recruiters are out on LinkedIn. That's just another way you can connect with them as well. Lastly, before we get to Q&A, just to make you aware, part 3 of this 3-part webinar series is next Wednesday at the exact same time, 1 to 2 p.m., June 17th, 1 to 2 Eastern time. We're going to cover interviewing and offer negotiations. So If you haven't registered yet, please go to our website, and you'll see we've got a posting there, same place you registered for this webinar, where you can register for the final webinar. And with that said, we're going to get into the Q&A. So let me get up here. We've got a few questions here. So if I am employed by a company right now, but I'm not interested but I am interested in looking for opportunities elsewhere, how should I go about a job search without harming my current employment? So obviously you want to be very careful and not signal to your employers that you're looking for work. There is a pretty cool feature within LinkedIn that you can turn on and off called open to other opportunities. Know that that's safe to do at your current employer, because your current employer can't really see that you've done that. So that's a good way to signal to other recruiters and employers, hey, I'm waving your hand, I'm open to being contacted, please reach out. You can also specify the types of roles you're interested in and so forth. But you definitely want to be very careful. You don't want to be sending out your resume over the work email. I would be a little bit wary about having conversations at work, because some companies do track communications. They track keyboard strokes. That's a little overkill in my opinion, but some companies do it. Some companies listen in on your conversations. Some companies will track, read your emails. So you don't want to do anything over that work domain. It's best, in my opinion, to set up a separate email address. Gmail's free, obviously, Yahoo, so forth. But also through Google Voice, you can even set up a separate phone number. So I think that's a good way to keep things separate from your employer and your job search. Obviously, when you have to go out and attend an interview, you're going to have to get a little bit creative when it comes to asking for time off. So that's probably the best way to separate those two. All right. So any tips for someone looking to change industries and roles, for example, moving from procurement to a planning role? That's a fantastic question. And, if you can do that internally, that's always best, assuming you want to stay with your current employer. So what I would recommend, and it's using similar tactics, but internally. So let's say you're a buyer and you want to move into a planner role. Well, I'm sure you probably know people. Most people in procurement know the folks that work in planning. So leverage your best relationship in there, and kind of signal to your boss as well that, hey, at some point I'd like to gain some experience in planning. Obviously, I'm going to fill out my duties here in my current role, but in the interim, I would like to explore opportunities in planning. So a few things you can do. Ideally, start with your manager. Let them know that, especially if you feel like they're supportive of your long-term career goals, which any good manager should be. They shouldn't be selfish and trying to keep you in their organization. But sadly, some managers act that way. You want to identify and ideally have that manager give you an introduction to the person that leads the planning function. It doesn't have to be the top person. If it could be somebody in mid-management. Facilitate introduction, have some kind of a call. Obviously, maybe getting together for coffee or lunch may not be something you do in the near term with the pandemic, but potentially setting up a Zoom call where you can just learn more about opportunities and tee yourself up. But in a normal world, you'd ideally want to get out for coffee or lunch to kind of start building that relationship. That's what it's all about. Make them aware of that opportunity. In the interim, though, you probably want to do some things like sharpening up your skills. What kind of skills are needed to be in this demand planner role? Well, you need to be really good with Excel. That's kind of a no-brainer. Familiar with these tools they use in planning. Sharpen your soft skills. You've got to interface with sales and marketing and so forth. So get a good sense of what it takes to be successful. If you have any gaps, go out and try to close those gaps through learning, development, mentoring, and so forth. Now, if you can't make that move internally, have a deadline, be flexible. These days, you need to be flexible with the job market and the economy being the way it is. But if you can't do things internally, have that final deadline. Well, if I can't make a movement here, this is where I want to be, then you may have to have a plan B that involves looking externally, following the advice that we just covered. All right, let's see. Are there any good ways to get in contact with the hiring manager directly? So we kind of covered this a bit, but you want to leverage every tool out there. Again, email. I referenced a couple of free tools on the webinar that you can hopefully get some contact information. There's a bunch of tools that do that, but if you look up email, look up tool, it should give you a list. Obviously, connect on LinkedIn once that hiring manager accepts your invite. Always personalize those invites. Don't just send out a random, please join my LinkedIn network. Again, that's a place for you to shine and say who you are while you're writing, the kind of value, how you help people, how you solve problems. Once you connect, though, you can obviously send a message directly through LinkedIn. And you can also pull their email address from their profile, and send them a separate email. Lastly, you can look up the switchboard for any company and call into the company, ask for that person. I think that you want to leverage phone, email, and social. Use all three. That's the best way to get in touch with a contact manager, in touch with the hiring manager. I think we have time for one more question. How do you get noticed if you're in one market but you're looking to relocate to another? That's a great question. I've had that question come up here recently, just in my day job here at SCM Talent Group. So just know that during a pandemic, especially in a big recession, we're in a recession here. You've got a lot more people that are vying for lesser opportunities, so there's going to be a lot more competition. A lot more candidates coming in through those job postings too, right? So to stand out in a different market, you got to also bear in mind companies are trying to cut costs, save money, if you will. And relocation can be a pretty big expense, especially if you've got a home involved, depending on the company's relocation packages. Large companies have usually a very robust. Smaller companies may just have a lump sum, cash sum bonus. But consider this: if you're, if you need, you got to do the math here. Look at your financial situation. If you absolutely need money from the employer, relocation assistance, that's one thing. If you're flexible though, and let's say I can afford to relocate myself and my family, one thing you might want to consider is if you've got a friend, and you don't even have to have a friend these days, the companies are going to be looking to save costs. They're going to be looking for local applicants first. That's almost, I wouldn't say always the case, but I would say 9 out of 10 times. If I'm in a place like Atlanta, I've got people in my backyard, I'm going to focus there, knowing my employer may not want to pay for relocation dollars. So what can behoove you is to put, let's say you're in Milwaukee and you want to go to Atlanta, and you're strictly applying for position in Atlanta. Well, what you might want to do is put in Atlanta. You don't have to have the address, but just put Atlanta, Georgia. And you might want to put a little something at the top of your resume, maybe even your LinkedIn profile, seeking supply chain or whatever it is, employment opportunities in Atlanta. Just be prepared though. The employer may say, "Hey, I see you're in Atlanta." You could say, "Well, I'm not quite there yet. I'm happy. I'm in process of moving. I'm going to pay for my own expenses. But I know that if I didn't put an Atlanta address, guess what? You're probably not even going to consider me." So that's a tactic that I would use. All right. Well, that concludes today's webinar on job search strategies and networking tactics. Thank you so much for attending. We hope you benefited from this. Again, if you want that job search tracking template, feel free to send an email to rodney.apple@scmtalent.com, and I will get that over to you right away. We hope you can join us for the third webinar coming up. Again, Wednesday, the 17th from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time, interviewing and offer negotiation tactics. In the meantime, hope you stay safe and healthy, and we'll be talking to you soon. Thanks so much.